came home early and heard loud noises in our bedroom. He picked up a chainsaw and took revenge. What happened is a misfortunate incident and brought about by my greed and covetousness. I'm going to say how it cost me my name, life, and entirety. It was an event brought about by a series of previous occurrences in which I will give a detailed account of how it all came to be the best that I can to your understanding. Hi Redditors, my name is Angel and I am 27 years of age. I'm a lady who graduated from college 4 years ago, having studied marketing for 4 years at one of the prestigious and popular colleges in the state. I'm an easygoing lady who loves to party out at nights. I love dancing, singing, and I'm a big fan of modern-day pop. Unlike most ladies, I also engage in sports and working out, as I was a student athlete who played lawn tennis back in school, although I couldn't further due to financial block. I currently own a salon in a popular district in the state. I got married to my husband at the age of 24 a year after I finished college, and it has been a blessing in my life and my progress as a person. We have a child together and his name is Jay. My husband Hayden Smith was the only child born into a family of farmers, which meant he had to continue the family's legacy by being one. Alongside farming, he is a preacher at our church. I hardly attend, unlike my husband, who is more religious. He is 29-year-old and he is 2 years older than I am. He is a calm man who takes his farming business seriously since it is a family's legacy. He also hopes to pass it to our son in the future. He loves sports, especially basketball. He loves cooking and also visits the gym regularly on free days when he isn't involved in the farm or isn't engaging in the church's assignment. He graduated from the university with a top grade, finishing as the best graduate of the Department of Social and Human History. My husband and I, alongside our son, have a really beautiful and real family. My friends told me that they envied our family. It's such a blessing to be a preacher's wife. He is an honest and caring man, but he detests dishonesty and cheating. He loses trust once it is broken, especially from someone he least expected it from, which includes his family, me, his wife, and a couple of his friends. Hayden and I met not quite long after I graduated. It was at a grocery store where we first bumped into each other while I was picking up food items from the store, and he was probably getting his food items sorted out too, but he left the store earlier than I did. After I paid the cashier, I was on my way out of the store to get a cab to take me home. It was at this point a vehicle drove in front of me. It was him. He offered me a ride, and at first I refused, and then he insisted. I'm pretty sure he had no intention of backing down from his offer, so I accepted his offer for a ride. He then told me he had been waiting outside the store for me since he left. He told me he felt a connection when we met, and he would like to have my contact, and this was after he had properly introduced himself. I agreed and gave him my contact, and he did the same. After this, we went on a couple of dinner dates, road trips, and one thing led to another, and we married, in which we had a son not too long after our marriage. It is no news that I own and run a hairdressing salon, as I have stated earlier. I have a work secretary who goes by the name Jessica. She helps and assists me with administrative and other relevant duties at work, unlike other workers who are mainly hairdressing professionals. I started my salon a few months after I graduated from college, and it has been booming with customers and has been really profitable. About a year ago, something unfortunate happened at my work. It caught fire with no loss of life, but then the majority of my equipment and work properties were destroyed. The fire outbreak happened overnight during closing hours and was apparently caused by an accident. Jessica had failed to switch off one of the hair curlers on this day before closing. I had no insurance, and I had to find a way to make repairs to the damaged building. Of course, the finances for the reconstruction and repair would have to be paid by me and my husband since there was no insurance. I was introduced to a real estate and building construction agent who happens to know about these sorts of things. I mean the repair and reconstruction. The agent's name was Angela, similar to my name. The first meeting I had with her was in front of my burnt salon shop. Hayden had helped me to call her and informed her we were going to meet there. Once she arrived, I was surprised the agent was a female, as it has never been a ladies' area of expatriate to deal in affairs like this, and it was at this point, I believe. She introduced herself and told me her name. She took a look around the salon and suggested a contractor who was going to handle the reconstruction. She placed a call right in my presence, calling the contractor, asking for his availability, in order to suggest he meets up with us at the location. It was a disappointment since the contractor told her he wasn't available at that moment, and we fixed a meeting for the next day at 10 o'clock in the morning, in which it was agreed. It was the second day I moved to the salon after our agreed meeting the previous day. I had made breakfast for my husband, who was going to drop our son at school on his way to work. I got to the meeting point at 5 minutes after 10 in the morning, where I had met Angela, who was already briefing the contractor on the matter at hand. From my viewpoint, I couldn't see his face from the parking lot, and he wasn't really facing in my direction. I moved closer, and to my shock and surprise, I saw Jacob, my ex-boyfriend who we once dated when we were both at school. The relationship ended for some reason best known to him. How could someone just wake up and say they want to break up? Because that's what he did. He just requested for space, and even though I still loved him, I had to let him go. I didn't want it forced, so we just broke, and now we were meeting ourselves again. The look he had on his face made it clear that he was shocked also, but then we decided to hide it from Angela without an agreement since no one talked about it or made mention of it. Angela introduced us to ourselves, and we went ahead to discuss business. Jacob decided he was going to take over the project. Jacob and I agreed to meet the following week to discuss the method of work progression, and that he needed time to start preparations for work. It was the following week on a Tuesday as agreed that we met, and it was at this time Jacob suggested we take a look at another space a few streets away I might be interested in. He told me the apartment was cheaper and at the same time bigger and more favorable to my business. I was interested in the place because of the way he was talking about the building. He said it was well located, has a better chance of getting customers, and the reconstruction will cost far less than the repair of the burnt salon. We went there together with him driving. Yes, I went with him in his vehicle, especially because I believe there are topics to be cleared between us. He told me how he had been faring since school days and explained his reasons for the breakup. We discussed other topics, and it was at this point I got to know that he was still a bachelor, although he had multiple relationships since we broke up. Before leaving the salon, I had called Angela, the real estate agent, to meet us at the new location since she is my consultant. I asked for her availability, and she told me she would be available. I sent her the address, and she agreed that she would meet Jacob and I at the new location. I got to the new apartment with Jacob, and truly it was really a bigger space. I don't know much about the other details and factors to consider before accepting the new deal and space for reconstruction. Jacob was showing me around the apartment and its features when Angela walked in on us. Jacob also showed her around the apartment with me asking the necessary questions I needed to ask, and Angela told Jacob to excuse us that me and her needed to discuss privately. He left the apartment for the time being. Angela advised me to accept the deal, saying it was better than the previous, but also suggested she will help me with beating down the payment of the whole contract. She called Jacob back into the room and then negotiated the payment with him. At first he was reluctant, but then he accepted the fee and we made it a deal. He told Angela and I that the whole construction process and restructuring will take up to 3 months to be fully prepared. After we had agreed with the terms and conditions of the deal with the paperwork sorted out, we all left the new apartment together. Not long after the salon project was started, days had passed, and this was the first meeting between my husband and my ex-boyfriend. Hayden and I were on a road jogging session. It was a regular workout session which we engaged in on Saturday mornings, but on this day we crossed paths with Jacob, who was also out working out. I introduced Jacob to my husband as the contractor in charge of the salon project, and to Jacob I introduced Hayden as my husband. They greeted themselves, and then they still continued with their routine. My next visit to the proposed new salon was after a month and a week on a Thursday. I prepared the morning meal because it was a routine after the whole family had breakfast together. I told my husband what my plans were for the day. I told him I was going to visit the grocery store to get some food items, and I would branch to the new salon to take a look at the progress of the reconstruction of the space. He suggested that he go with me. He told me he would also love to see the salon and its progress, so we decided to take a tour on this very Thursday. Hayden and I did all our activities planned for the day and headed to the salon where we arrived, and then we headed inside. We met Jacob, who was giving directives to his workers on what to do. He was also supervising. This was the second meeting between them. Jacob and Hayden. My husband suggested some additions that should be done to design. He only gave his opinion on what should be added, and I agreed with him. And looking at the progress of the job, Jacob has been doing a commendable job. After the check was done, we left. My second visit to the venue was alone, and this was the day Jacob made his first attempt to get me back. The next Thursday came, and I visited the site yet again, because Jacob had called me giving me a notice that he had suggestions he would like to incorporate into the salon's design, and he needed my permission to execute the proposal. I arrived at the agreed time. I checked out the proposal, which was good, and I agreed, but I should have known that it was a bait to make me come over so he could have a conversation with me. It was not obvious to him, but I still had a little ounce of feelings for Jacob, but then I really do love my husband. He walked me out to the car park where my car is, and he started confessing how much he still liked me, and said to me he didn't know how to make a move at me because I was married, and then he could not hold back anymore, especially since we would be seeing each other much more frequently. He said that if he had a chance to do it again, he would not have broken up with me back then when we were at school. But I turned him down, not because I did not love him anymore, but because I am married, and then a preacher's wife. The job was completed in 3 months and a few days, not up to a week as planned, but at this period, my husband had gone out of town for a missionary assignment in which he took our son along with him. Being out of town simply meant he would not be able to attend the opening ceremony that I had planned for the launch of my salon at its new location, after the previous one got burnt. I invited my sister Circle, my friends and customers including Jacob, who attended the relaunch where there was all sorts of refreshment at the event. It was an occasion filled with drama, comedy, dance, music, and lots of fun. At the end party, there were 2 people left at the salon after every other person had gone home. We stood back to continue drinking and talking for a while, and he told me that he noticed my husband was not at my ceremony. I replied to him that he went on an assignment at work and he would be away for a while. I think I was drunk, and when I get drunk, I say things unnecessarily. I talked more to Jacob about Hayden and regarding my love life with him. I told him it had been months since I and my husband had made love to each other. It's either he was tired from farm work or he was far away on ministry duties for a long period of time, and this was taking a toll on my mental health and love life as a young lady. He then said to me, "Why not be with him?" I laughed out loud when he said that, and I said nothing else. It was silent for some while, but I wanted to change the topic. I told him that we're friends now, but I still didn't know where he stayed. He agreed and told me that was true, and then suggested we go check his place out now. Especially since I was drunk, I had no one to drive me back home and I could just spend the night at his place. This marked the beginning of a new affair between me and my ex-boyfriend. I got to his home that night and I was shocked at my sight. I asked him if he was truly the owner of such a beautiful home, and he confirmed it by saying yes. We entered and I was directed to the restroom where I took my bath because I was feeling hot. He offered me water after this, but I rejected requesting for more alcohol and he gave it to me. Soon after, I started rubbing my hand on his lap. He was sitting beside me. I was with him in the living room at this point. I then leaned towards him to kiss him and he returned the kiss. I don't know what came over me, but it happened. Our first intercourse after a long period of time, and I won't deny that I enjoyed it. The next morning, we woke up and we talked about what had happened. It had been a long time since I'd felt this good and I wanted it more. I guess Jacob felt it too. We both agreed that it was the start of an affair, and he confirmed while giving me a guarantee it will be our secret. After I had left the bed, I freshened up and returned home that morning to prepare for my husband and son's return from their journey. After the first day of the affair, we met occasionally for lovemaking, especially on the days of my husband's absence from town. Sometimes he would visit me at work, and the affair went on for weeks without my husband suspecting or being suspicious of such an affair until a day came. The saying that every day is for the thief, and a day, just a day was for the owner, was a true thing. On this unfortunate and unlucky day in which I thought I had carefully planned and sorted out, my husband was to go and deliver some farm harvest to a neighboring town with my expectations that he would take a long time and wouldn't come home early from work. I faked an illness and I told him I would not be going to work on that day. I had already planned for Jacob's visit at my place. My husband agreed and suggested I needed to rest, and on this day, he took our kid to school and headed to the farm with me, hoping he would execute his plan and come late on this day. He had also agreed with me that since he would be coming late in the evening, probably around 7 o'clock because that was his usual time of arrival any time he had to deliver such harvest to a neighboring town. He suggested that I pick our son up in the afternoon around 2 o'clock from school. I agreed with him and that was sorted out. On this day, Hayden took Jay at 8 o'clock in the morning. When it was 9 in the morning, an hour after they had left, I called Jacob to come over, telling him I was alone at home and I will be hosting him at home. He arrived 30 minutes after calling, and by then I had already started preparing meals I wouldn't have cooked on a normal day, not even for my husband. When he arrived, I served him after I was done cooking. We talked more, and this was around 11 o'clock in the morning. We headed into the room for our usual room activity. We had begun, and at this point I was on top of him, and I couldn't not scream, if you understand. It was then that the door opened on us and someone walked in with a chainsaw. It was Hayden who charged at us with annoyance, and as soon as I saw him, I jumped off Jacob, who also turned off the bed to evade his slash. Hayden told me that he had canceled the delivery of the harvested produce and returned home not long after dropping our son at school. His intention was to stay at home with his ill wife, and had moved the delivery to another day. He said when he got back home, he had brought the chainsaw, a lumbering tool, to the farm in which he wanted to drop it. He needed it for use at home to cut some trees. He opened the door to the living room downstairs and was hearing weird and loud noises, which he rushed up with the chainsaw in his hand. He couldn't believe his eyes, and he was shocked when he saw Jacob and I on his bed, and he couldn't contain his anger, so he just decided to let it all out with bloodlust and rushed towards us to take revenge. Immediately, I stood up from Jacob. He ran out of the house without his shirt on, and Hayden chased after him. This was my chance, and I wore my clothes as fast as possible so as to be able to escape for the time being till my husband's head is cool off, because I'd never seen him this angry. Hayden was unable to catch Jacob, so he returned for me, although I was already outside the house when he came back. He went inside knowing that it was futile to start chasing me around the way he just did with Jacob. He went up into our room and started tossing off my luggage, and I'm scared and worried. Update. After a lot of pleading that day, Hayden turned a deaf ear and insisted I was done in his home. I picked up my luggage and headed for a friend's house. He took possession of our son and also cut the credit card payment for the reconstruction of the salon, which was to be paid in installment. The rental fee of the apartment used for the salon was on his card and bills, but he cut off everything, and through this action, I lost the salon. I should have expected this, and I brought this unto myself. I didn't think of the consequences that would happen. I visited Jacob after the incident. That bull. Jacob broke off with me and told me he had no intention of actually dating me or accepting me into his home, and he said it was just like the old days in which everything was for fun. I felt so silly at what he said. He played me and I fell foolishly. A few weeks after, I was presented with the child possession papers for our son, which stated that I could only visit him twice a month, and alongside was a divorce paper to annul the marriage between I and Hayden. We have divorced, and I have been single with no job, no work, and a ruined life. I tried chewing my cake and having it back. Things would have been better only if Jessica had switched off the curl. It would have been better if I had not met Jacob once again. Things would have been better if I had kept my distance from Jacob when he made his advancement towards me, and I had kept our relationship at business strictly. If only he never attended my opening party, and I didn't visit his home. Maybe it would have been better if my husband had also tried as much as possible to make time for me, other than the fact that most of his focus was work-based. Above all, my situation would have been better if I had stuck to my husband and not allowed greed take over my love interest. This is the story of how I lost my work, my name, and marriage. The story of how I let greed and covetousness take over and ruin my life. It was all my fault, and I take the blame for this incident. I hope the young ladies out there learn from my story not to make mistakes such as mine, and they should be able to control and reject all sinful advancement that will ruin the things they cherish. I hope at the end I will be able to regain myself and rebuild my status before it gets too late.